left, right.
Yo, what is up, my friends? Thank you for joining us for this episode 116 of SipTalk. Today we are talking about deal breakers. These are deal breakers when it comes to relationships. I think this is an episode you might really dig, and we didn't get to finish what we wanted to finish. So the following episode we'll be talking about red flags. So we didn't get to red flags. Hang in there. Let me know what we missed in the deal breakers. Let me know which deal breakers you think are the big ones, and I'll see you on the other end. This is Sip Talk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Of course, let's go.
Cheers.
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 Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 116 of Sip Talk. I think a couple of us have already been having some cocktails before the podcast. James, you were drinking before, yeah?
If you count a single beer.
Oh, what beer was that?
It was Low Tide Brewery's Sour Pear.
Is that something that's available nationwide, or is that a local?
No, it's hardly available Charleston-wide.
My name is Justin DeJulia. I'm coming at you from my basement in New Jersey, just outside Manhattan. If you're watching us live, above me is James the Boswell, philosopher, philanthropist, architect. What are your designations again? I'm sorry.
Nepotist.
Yeah, philanthropist I think is actually kind of a stretch.
Well, it's a lot of
misanthropist.
There's a lot of syllables.
Yes, that.
James is a bartender, an accountant, a professional soccer referee, and a philosopher. Joined below us, if you're watching live, is David Boswell, the political scientist, which actually I thought we were reaching when we came up with the title political scientist, but I actually heard that as a designation on NPR the other day. So very official. David Boswell out of Sacramento, California. James the Boswell out of Charleston, South Carolina. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Very happy that we are all together. James had a single beer before we got started. My train got delayed massively, so I hopped into a bar and had several single beers. One beer in each glass. It came as a single glass each time they refilled it. So last time we were talking about prostitution, legalizing prostitution, decriminalizing prostitution, and regulating prostitution. James, would you like to repeat what your question was at the end of the last podcast?
So the question that I asked was, if you are dating a girl and you're thinking about this is a serious relationship and you might eventually even consider marrying her, and she reveals to you that a long time ago she worked as an escort or a prostitute, would that change your decision as to whether or not you still wanted to consider the relationship as seriously as you previously had?
I thought that was a good question, a bit narrow-minded. We could open that up across the sexual stratosphere, whether it was a guy that you were dating or sorry, Dave, I feel like sexual stratosphere is just about as insulting as the alphabet, which you got lambasted for the last time you joined us.
Yeah, and I didn't find what you just said terribly offensive. So
you didn't find it
show a point.
Well, I think as long as it's coming from a place of being open-minded and trying to be a bit comical, that's all right. But James, you brought up a really good point. So if you're dating somebody now and you found out 7 years ago, 7 months ago, that they used to be in the, I don't know what you would call it, the profession of sexual.
Just call them professionals.
Yeah, if they used to be a professional, how that's going to shape your current relationship. Now, I feel my thinking is for the upper echelon, that top 2.5 to top 5%, confidence holders, those people who are super confident, may not affect them so much. I think they probably just cruise on with that relationship. They may have some questions that they wouldn't have had previously, but I feel like it's not going to affect that relationship quite as much as when you dip below that 95th percentile of confidence. You follow me there?
Mhm.
I feel like there's a lot of shit if you're super confident that just is, you just deal with it, just comes at you, you deflect it, but you don't question where you stand in relationships.
Well, let me ask both of you this question. And like answer the question, because like we can talk about generalities, but I want to know your specific answer.
All right, let's take a pause and I'll address that. James, what are you drinking down there in not so sunny South Carolina?
Still going with the box wine.
Box wine. Any Bush Ice?
No. I already had beer for the day, and like the accumulated effects of 4 or 5 straight days of boozing are starting to show in the heartburn areas. So
The heartburn areas.
yeah, gotta chew on some antacid tablets before I go out later on tonight. We
Good.
should also greet Blondes Have from One says hi. Ralph 0522 says hey, and Shihir Abba is here again.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Ralph, Blondes Have More Fun. Shahira, thank you guys for joining. Sorry if we missed you, but if you guys are joining us for the first time, make sure you say hi. And if you're joining us again, I see Social Bird 7. Hi, everybody. Welcome on TikTok. Yeah, so we're live TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube or listening to us on any audio podcast platform, Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, make sure you guys subscribe. So James, you're drinking the box wine. David over there on the left side. It sounds like it might be your last joining. The last of you joining us from Sacramento. Sounds like you've been smoked out of Sacramento.
Yeah, I've been smoked out, cooked out. It's gonna be 112 degrees here on Saturday. I was supposed to go out and float down the river with some buddies, like 4 or 5 hours just on tubes in the river. That would have been.
But no, that makes me think of like when you boil bagels, like when you cook bagels.
Yeah. we are a very monochrome group, so it would appear that way. Not by choice. I don't need to get lambasted next week over that. It's not like it's a rule. But they called it off, which is a good thing because I've got an 8-hour drive down to San Diego on Sunday, and drinking beer for 6 hours in the river, exposed to 112-degree heat in the air. Yeah, you can get in the water, but still, just being out in the sun that long, that was already rolling the dice. So happy to have that called off, pack it in, have a nice easy day. But yeah, this is the last airing for me from sunny Sacramento. Next week, James and I will be together in sunny San Diego.
Where it will not be 112 degrees.
No, it will not be 112 degrees down there. So
now, have you? So you're moving, correct?
Yep.
Have you hired movers already?
Yes.
All right. And what are you drinking?
I am drinking some hard kombucha because it was.
No shit.
Yeah, no, it was $2 at grocery outlet for a 6-pack. So
what?
Yeah, pretty easy call.
Wait, $2 for a 6-pack or $2 per beer for a 6-pack?
$2 for 6 cans of hard kombucha.
I would have bought everyone that they had.
Yeah, I only have so many arms. I bought 3, and I only have so much room in my fridge.
Wow.
You don't want to let it sit out.
I just bought a 5-hour energy drink for $4.99. So I paid $1 per hour of energy, and that was maybe 2 hours ago. I'm drinking the Michelob Ultra in a can because I'm classy and I'm a beer connoisseur, clearly.
Bush Ice would like to have a word.
So the question is, would you date somebody who is a sex professional? And if you were dating somebody who was, well, either or, would you date somebody who's a professional in the sex fields? Or if you were dating someone, you found out they were a professional in the sex fields, would that alter your relationship?
What's your answer?
I actually think it would really depend on where I am in my life and how long ago it was and the specifics of what they were doing. Because really, when it comes down to the specifics of what they were doing, it has a lot to do with who that person is. Some people hit rock bottom and they sell the only thing they have left, and that's their body. And you got to question the nature of that rock bottom. You got to question the nature of where that person was in their life and how far they've come. Some people with rocking bodies realize that that's a major asset that they have, and why not use that, right? Like, you got other things going for you, but why not profit a little bit there? And that's a slightly different perspective on. Oh wait, what's this? What do we have the comments coming in?
We're waiting on the question.
Okay.
Let me ask you this question.
Okay.
Does it matter how they tell you or how you found out?
Well, also that does matter. If somebody deceives you for 2.5 years and then drops it on you, versus, and I use this in every aspect of life. I do not have herpes. I hope to never have herpes. I don't think I will at this point in my life, given levels of commitment that are currently achieved. But there's certain. So when you imagine you have herpes, like, you don't want to tell somebody before your first date. You're probably not going to tell them on your first date, but you probably have to tell them before you sleep with them.
You should.
So there's a certain level of connection you have to achieve before you tell someone that you have herpes without scaring them away. So that's almost like a salesman has to figure out where that perfect point is to drop somebody some bad news. And somebody who works in the sales field, you understand that you can't just blurt it out right off the bat. I have herpes. If you're online dating, you're not going to put an asterisk under your name and say I have herpes.
Also, probably not in a sales presentation.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm Justin. I'm here to pitch you some apartments. I've got herpes. Look at this one. This uses great natural sunlight.
I like his pitch.
But
Straight shooter doesn't hide anything.
But the point is, there are obvious. Everybody in their life has some negatives and some baggage. And you have to figure out when is an appropriate level to drop that baggage. You don't want to hold it back too late because then you've been deceptive, but you don't want to introduce it too early because then you're going to scare everybody away. So that's kind of the herpes dilemma. And you could, if you're someone who has kids and you're trying to date, that is,
that's a day one.
That should be included in the profile.
I think that would be later on in date one. Right?
Yeah, no, I'm with Derv. I'm like, that's either a day 0 or a day 1.
So look, so what we're going to cover right now is some deal breakers and some.
Derv doesn't answer the question yet either.
All right. So, but I'm just letting everybody know that we're going to get to the deal breaker list. We're going to get to the red flag list. The deal breaker list is a list that's been populated by the listeners and the viewers of the podcast. The red flag list is a list that I put together, some red flags to look out for early on in a relationship or prior to a relationship. So David, tell us about your stripper girlfriend.
Not falling for that one yet. It depends on the nature of the sex work, and not because of the nature of the sex work, because of the other social implications of it. And I guess this is as hypocritical as anyone else would be, but if someone is an escort, and again, James was pointing out, how do you find out? Do they let you know, or do you find out on your own? And that brings me to my point of escort, sex worker doesn't bother me. If it were public, that would be a different consideration, because if you ever want to consider bringing kids into the picture, everything's on the internet. You don't want to be the kid whose mom did porn, or dad did porn, or mom's and
so
dad.
So you don't want to be the kid in middle school whose mom has an OnlyFans page,
or dad.
Or
but
dad.
Yeah, there's actually
swinging his dick around on OnlyFans. Yeah,
you're missing a great effect. But Sacramento, The Graduate, Sacramento, it was a couple months ago, there was actually something that came out about some parents that, it was a group of parents that did OnlyFans, and they were making really good money doing it, but then it came out and it was this whole thing.
So, but what if you're a teacher? I mean, but here's where we are in like modern times. What if you're a teacher and you teach like third graders, but you also have an OnlyFans page? Now, I think in your personal and professional life, you can have a very hard line between the two. In fact, you can have two professional lives and a personal life. The professional life being the OnlyFans, the other professional life being your third graders, and the personal life being something completely separate. And then you deal with the overlap as it occurs, which is probably not super often. You know, people live, and this is obviously super prior to social media and everybody being connected in all ways at all times. But people have different aspects of their life that they choose to share with certain people. It's just now as we get meshed together in this kind of digital, I don't know what you would call it, compress here, that that there's a heavier amount of overlap. But but
You see the distinction though between between public and private though, as kind of, I guess, getting into the deal breaker, like that might be
well, what if
an
private
issue of concern.
what if we're qualifying private as sexual life and then you publicly
No,
broadcast?
I'm talking about things that, to James's point earlier about finding out versus being told. If it's public enough that you could find out on your own, that means other people will be able to find out just as easily. Same thing with porn that you posted online that is identifiable. Public versus private in terms of, is it easy to find out, or is it not? Is it something that no one would ever think or ever be able to find out, but for having been informed?
But at some point you find out.
Yeah, but I'm saying, do they tell you, or is it something that's out there that's easy to find? James, can you clarify this? It doesn't seem to be.
No, I mean it's sinking in for me. It's just that every particular situation that I'm basically running a few different scenarios through my head, and they're vastly different.
Well, I think there's a lot of nuance here, and I think that, like, I understand the distinction that Derv's drawing between public and private, but to me, I don't think it matters in the context of the question that we're asking. Because if I'm dating somebody, regardless of how public some potentially compromising information is, the fact that I had to find it out by myself instead of you telling me says a lot.
Well,
because
sorry, finish your statement.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much the point.
I'll contextualize it. All right, you've been on, let's call it the 2-month mark. All right, and you've been on 6 to 12 dates with somebody, which is 1 date a week, more or less. Not, maybe you got a busy week, or maybe you got some opening in your week. 2 months in, and somebody tells you that they used to do porn, or they used to have an OnlyFans page. Either way, you have to run through the scenario that.
So they're volunteering the information.
Yes, you have to run through the scenario that there's 100 to 100,000 to considerably more dudes jacking off to your girlfriend.
No, now like 100,001,
but my point is,
hopefully not if she's your girlfriend.
This deeper, well, but you don't know the reach of the digital what kind of resides on the internet. So you have to figure out. I mean, if she used to be an escort, those are kind of one-offs, and that lives in memories. But if it's somebody who existed online, you have this residual kind of online presence that may always be there.
So my biggest question is she doing it still?
Well, I think that takes a very specific person. I don't know much about that kind of porn aspect of porn actors and actresses dating, but I feel
a lot of times they do. A lot of times, like, people that are in the adult film industry will have a relationship that they're in, and then they have their job.
And I think for the most part, and this is my understanding of it, is that they can differentiate the two. One is professional work, and one is personal life. But but most people can't do that, so they end up dating, just like actors. A lot of people who are non-actors can't understand what it's like to be in the public light, so actors end up dating actors. So it takes somebody who exists in that realm to understand what you're going through. And I think you take kind of the everyman, somebody who went to college and now has a 40-hour work week, dating somebody who obviously doesn't have that conventional lifestyle. That 40-hour work week person is not going to be able to empathize with that person who has the unconventional lifestyle. And also, again, we mentioned this in the last episode, that we live in a very super prudent country where people, in other countries, you walk out on the beach completely nude or topless. And here, if somebody else sees your girlfriend's tits, you're like, you got to break up with them. Basically, you're like, that's fuck. Like,
Well, and again, it's like if she showed them to him, then yeah, like I'm gonna question her judgment.
But
But
again,
now someone else saw them.
Yeah, like there's a big difference here. Like, how did this come about?
But all right, so here's what I want to do. I want to hit the comments that we got on the post.
Let's do the deal breakers.
All right, so let's hit some deal breakers because I think these deal breakers are super subjective. Let me just see if I have any quick messages about the deal breakers.
I think we should, like, when you list them off, I think we should all weigh in with just a yes or a no as to whether or not that's a deal breaker for you.
All right. So, fuck. The thing, I got a lot of direct messages that people didn't reply. So basically, you put the post out there, and people can reply within the post, or people can send you a direct message. So right now, actually, this was
not the foreplay.
This was much closer during the day. But I said, SipTalk podcast episode about guns, prostitution, going online. But first, you learned your long-term significant other used to be a sex worker. Could you stay? So for the most part of the day, it was 40 to 60, 45, 55. Right now, I got a 160 to roughly 230. 160 saying yes, 230 saying no. So it sounds like as time goes on, actually, the no, you wouldn't stay with them is growing. So
that's probably also true in real life.
In terms of real life,
as time goes on, you're like, yeah, no.
But I think, yeah, you're actually good point. Early on, you're like, I can deal with this. Later on, the more you think about it, you're like, nah, I couldn't deal with this. So. And then let's see, biggest relationship deal breakers and go. Here's what we got. Carol Ferrucci, lack of ambition.
Not a deal breaker.
I'm gonna run through them real quick, and then
like go through them one at a time, and we'll each weigh in as to whether or not it's a deal breaker for you.
Actually,
yeah, I don't think so. That's going to depend on personality.
Actually, you know what? On this note, some of these are funny as fuck. And
so we should weigh in on each one of them individually instead of going through the list, and then people forget which ones we talked about. And
all right, I'm gonna put some scotch in a glass.
How about you read some more deal breakers?
All right, you guys can relate to this. When she reveals she has a small penis.
Yes.
Actually, I read that wrong. Kazi says when she reveals she has a penis.
Yep, that's a deal breaker.
That's a deal breaker.
Still I rise. Gambling.
Yeah.
Nope. Not again.
Yeah, I can see gambling absolutely being a deal breaker. It depends on the gambling or gambling addiction.
But gambling is such a variable.
True.
Right? Like
it depends
gambling
on,
and gambling addiction, I think.
Gambling, no. Gambling, no. Gambling addiction, yes. Sorry.
I think but gambling qualifies as gambling addiction.
No. I gamble.
You mean any
gambling?
Okay. I've dated people who don't drink at all, so for them drinking would be an issue versus somebody who drinks regularly or socially versus drinking problem.
Okay, right. So you can have a moral opposition to gambling, or you can not have a moral opposition to gambling, but a practical opposition to gambling addiction.
Okay.
And that's where me and the Derv land is. If you're a gambling addict, there's going to be problems down the line from this.
Well, last time I played cards was years ago, and it's fun, but I'm not doing that now.
Right. I'm not
compelled to.
I'm not much of a cards guy. I get a whole bunch around my birthday and like certain holidays, but I'm not much.
Sepet says when he comes in 3 seconds. Not a deal breaker for me. Easy job.
$20 is $20.
Yeah.
That works out to a great hourly rate. If you can scale up.
From Samantha.
This is the scalable business model.
Inside to out.
Here's a good one. Political affiliation. That I could see that being a big deal breaker.
Yeah, that could
it might actually be. Yeah. Yeah. I hate to say it, but in the last 5 years, my 5 years ago, my answer would have been no. Today, my answer is yes.
No, for me, 5 years ago, it definitely would have been a major deal breaker. But I feel like in the last 5 or 6 years, politics have gotten a bit kind of scrambled up. So
Blondes have more.
I'd still say yes. I'd still say yes, but I would, kind of with a caveat and be like, I need the specific details.
Blondes have more fun says alcoholic
versus a drinker.
Yeah, but I think it's really like most people drink, but most people aren't alcoholics.
Well, what about
I mean, there's
what about this
who
as a deal
drink
breaker?
more.
And this is coming from the three of us, someone who doesn't drink.
Not a deal breaker, as long as she's okay with me drinking.
How, depending on how much you drink.
I can tail it back. In fact, I probably should.
All right, Spyglass Ambler. And so Spyglass Ambler. Mask. When people make their screen names, like they have to understand that somebody else has to be able to pronounce them.
Sound it out.
Masks and vaccines. So that's the deal breaker, masks. And so I guess if the person is a big masker and they're like pro-vaccine, my take on this, it just says masks and vaccines.
Probably someone that's anti both of
Yeah,
those.
Spyglass Ambler. If you're listening to us, my guess is you're an anti-vaxxer, anti-masker. Christina Orso.
Not necessarily.
Whoa,
They
hold on.
could be
Let's
not impugn them. They might just be bringing that up as something saying if they were to be with someone who was very
Well,
anti-vax.
here, you know what? Not being specific is a deal breaker for me.
Okay, but hold on. Let's analyze the let's hit this one up. So like if you're anti-vax, if would you date someone that's anti-vax? Now my answer is no, and the reason is not necessarily for the stance itself, but for what it tells me about you. That
good point.
Is I don't have an issue because I can understand some arguments against getting vaccinated, but for the most part, people that are anti-vax are anti-science and anti-logical and reasonable analysis of a situation. And I can't date somebody like that.
So for me, who's not gotten vaccinated, I'm still fully pro-vax. Like I'm just like we all need to do it. You're
also fully pro-laziness.
Yeah, that's what it is. but if you put a vaccination station outside of my office and it took 5 minutes, I'd be like, I'm like, all right, it's fine. I'll go there. But the fact that it's like several avenues away, I'm like, but I agree with you. I
want to throw it in courtesy of Andrew. Deal breaker. Adam's apple.
An apple a day keeps it docked away. All right, Christina Orso being condescending.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also, I think the condescending thing to a degree comes from the perspective of the condescendee.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you have a victim complex, sure, but I'd say that like being condescending is again another thing where like it's not the condescension itself that's the problem, it's what it shows about you, which is if you're dating somebody, it's really not that hard to be nice to people.
Well, also power dynamics. Hold up, power dynamics in a relationship need to be more so equal. So if one person is looking down, which is effectively condescending, is looking down on the other person, that the power dynamics of that relationship, it's just not going to be a long-lasting relationship unless somebody is really coming to the table as like a gold digger type complex where they know they're the lower part.
Yeah,
it doesn't even have to be condescension against the partner. Think about, here's a deal breaker, someone being rude to the waiter.
I knew you were going to say that. Fuck that shit.
Because that is condescending as fuck, and that is an immediate deal breaker. If you're rude to the waiter or server or waitress or there's times where I almost celebrate seeing people being rude to waiters and staff, and in the sense that when I see somebody doing that, I'm like, wow, this is my perfect indicator that this is a terrifically shitty person.
Yeah, we don't have to hang out. I already know it.
No, but it's like that's the person. It's not like a red flag, like theoretically. It's like that person is holding the fucking flag over their head, and you're like, this is a shitty person. So I don't mean celebrating as it's a good thing. No, for me, it's a good thing that I've identified who this person is. Like
all right, here's a good question. I want to address this one because I think it's really good, and then I want to throw one of mine out there. So MJ says, what about one partner having a higher sex drive? So my answer is, how big is the difference?
Well, I think a lot of us have probably been on both sides of that. And that's
not so much a
I
deal
think
breaker as something that's going to grind a relationship to bits slowly.
well, actually, very well said, David. Very slowly, but it is going to, because it's not just sex drive. It actually has to do with like feeling wanted and things like that. So
Agree.
the sex drive difference, whether it's higher or lower, can in what David just said is in the long term be a major ruiner of relationships.
Also depends when the sex drive difference comes about. If you start off the dating, then it's easy to call that more of a deal breaker at the beginning, saying, look, we just really don't match here physically. I want something completely different than you. Doesn't matter which side that's coming from. As opposed to 5 years down the line, maybe one of the two people has a distinct switch in their sex drive. And then that's going to be less of a deal breaker. That's going to be more
what
like
if you
slowly shredding it to bits.
Well, you said if you start off dating with a high sex drive and that dissipates. What if you start off the day with a high sex drive, but at the end of the day you get a low sex drive?
Well, that probably means that like certain things happened.
The morning sexers.
Hopefully it's with your partner.
The morning sexers versus the evening sexers. All right, so we got the mask, condescending.
Shahir Abba asks weight gain, or let's put it as being overweight.
No, well,
no, the weight gain, overweight. You decided on that when you started meeting somebody,
right? So we're saying like
gain,
deal breakers in terms of like when you're in a relationship, when you're deciding to start a relationship, is being overweight a deal breaker?
Well, every relationship contract that I sign has a 15% variable for weight. So you can drop 15%, you can gain 15%, but outside of that, it voids the contract.
Well, my answer is yes. Being overweight is a deal breaker.
Well, for James likes the skinnies. Actually, I want to discuss the weight gain and the weight on the red flag side of this podcast. But damn, we're fucking cruising already on this podcast. I gotta hit these because we're gonna run out of time. All right, here's a good one. Hold up. Here's a good one. Cigarettes. Nope,
not a deal breaker.
It's really not. When I was younger, it was a major deal breaker, but as I grew up, it wasn't so much of a deal breaker. Joblessness.
Nope.
Really?
It depends on why you're jobless.
Yeah, a lot has to do with personality. So current joblessness, it's one thing.
In and of itself, not a deal breaker. Next.
Cheating. that ought to be a deal breaker.
Those are the rules.
Yeah, that is kind of the rules. Psychotic, and then long distance. Oh,
wait, I'm sorry. Can we answer those separately?
Hang on. Cheating was from Meet Jobless, Mayor World. Cheating, Meet 1540. Andreas Mathau, psychotic / long distance.
But those are two very different
psychotic
things.
Sounds like a major deal breaker. You would know,
James. I really wish that it were.
It's not a deal breaker for James. Not a deal breaker for James.
It's a condition of entry.
Yeah, no, like in practice, it's actually been like bonus points.
It's a prerequisite.
It's usually good sex. Long distance. I think that really depends on the direction of that relationship.
Do you have plans to it not be long distance in the future?
Or are you totally cool with seeing somebody like once a month and then being committed to them? Or do you have plans to see somebody once a month and not be committed to them? Because both are plausible. James Mon 117, drugs or alcohol. So I don't know if that means abuse or it just means that Juanez.
I choose alcohol, not drugs.
But I don't know if Juanez is
drugs or alcohol. Yes.
Completely against. So
meth is the one. I'll say meth and crack.
Heroin too.
Heroin. Kind
of all grouped together. I like Shahira's comment, but let's talk about that 1 second. Adams in the band says, it's Adam who's been on the podcast before. It says kids or an ex that is still in the picture. Kids.
Let's separate those.
Well.
No, let's separate those. They're
very
two different things.
Well, obviously, yes. If you're well, although if you have kids with somebody and the ex is very likely still in the picture, if you have
Not if
joint
they're
custody.
dead.
Okay, you said that more. You said that almost shockingly, but oftentimes maybe somebody was a widow or widower, and you have kids together.
So
all right, let's separate them, and then we can have the combined question. Kids, that's not a huge deal breaker. Ex still around, depends on the nature.
But it
kids
also
for me is
depends-
the number
Probably
one
not.
deal breaker.
It also
If you have
depends-
kids, you're out.
But it depends on the age, James. You're not
Nope.
you're not in your 20s anymore. Most people you're gonna if you're meeting somebody in your mid 30s or close to 40, which are you gonna be
We're
on the
getting
closer
there.
side? You're gonna be on the north side of the 30s, right?
I'm gonna be at the
tomorrow.
midpoint.
Well,
What if
no,
you-
you hit the
yeah.
midpoint, and after whatever hour, it's the north side, right? Like you're gonna be on the north side, closer to 40, starting tomorrow. So,
Yeah, I'm aware, and that's why I'm single.
but
What if they had a
Among
kid when
other
they're
reasons.
six-
There's
But
lots
they
of
were-
other factors.
What if they were 16 when they had a kid? Now they're 32 and have a 16-year-old that they don't.
but somebody
Have to
who's in
really
their
deal
mid,
Nope,
somebody who's in
you're
their
out
mid
until,
30s,
until the kid's an adult kid that is no longer in the picture at all.
you can't do it.
Yeah, out.
But look, here's my point: is in your mid 30s, when you meet somebody who has zero baggage, that also should be a major red flag. So if somebody has a child, that may not be a major issue.
It is
right?
for
Like,
me.
if they more or less have their shit together and they've had a good relationship, and maybe they had let's say a major political difference in that relationship that tore them apart, or let's say a drug difference, maybe their significant other ended up being super addicted to drugs and that tore them apart.
And what
they
I'm
have
saying
they have a child
is that
together.
I don't care what the reason is that you had a kid. I don't care. Like for me,
What you
Here-
don't
here's-
want, what you don't want is that additional responsibility in your life.
no.
And
Here's where I fall on it. This is how I explain it. Is if I'm dating somebody, I want to be their number one. Now I understand that like family and career kind of like will temporarily take precedence. But if you have a kid, your kid should be the number one at all times, regardless of circumstance. And so if I'm dating somebody, I am automatically signing up for a silver medal if they have a kid. Because I will never win gold. And if I do, and the thing is, if I'm dating somebody and I'm eligible for gold, then that means that they're not a good parent. And I don't want to date them either. But no, like no kids. Kids are the number one deal breaker
right,
for me. Full
let's-
stop.
my opinion is that it's all circumstance by circumstance, and that kids are not a major deal breaker. But I'm not the
Hard line rule.
But that's your hard line rule, and I'm saying circumstance by circumstance. But we'll get back to kids in a minute. From Jess 3989,
Taraj says you can have a bronze medal if they have a kid and a dog. Yeah,
All
not
right.
a big fan of dogs either, but they're not
All
a
right,
deal breaker.
let's hit the comments and acknowledge the acknowledgees. Jess 3989 ICA. Domestic physical abuse. Unfortunately, people can hide that until marriage at times. So obviously a major deal breaker. And if that is an issue, you need to exit immediately or work on or at least start working.
If they
on
have a domestic violence history, that should be a deal breaker.
Absolutely.
I think 100%.
There's no
needs to
excuse
be-
for
it.
it.
needs to be a deal breaker. I don't think there's any excuse either, and that's that's kind of the justified.
Unless it's like 10 years post incident, lots and lots of therapy, proven track record of that never ever. I mean,
Well,
I
we
don't-
didn't
I don't
talk
think
about
anyone
that.
is ever unredeemable, but
well, we didn't
like,
talk
yeah,
about
well, my
that
last
about.
relationship ended because I beat her. Yeah,
But
I
look,
would run for the hills.
Sure, but we didn't
I think
talk
there
about
can be a
that.
little-
David, hear me out. We didn't even talk about that when it comes to prostitution. Somebody's 18, 19, 20, 23 years old and escorts or strips or whatever. And now you're in your 30s and they're like, yeah, there's a couple of years where I was like down and out and I was like, I got a rocking body. I'm going to make some money. Put myself through school, something like that. And that's behind me. But that was fucking 10 years ago. And yeah, there was a couple of fat dudes that like smoked some cigars and gave me some, money. I shook my ass, but fuck that shit. Yeah, that
Well,
was 10 years
I don't
ago.
think any of us said that was a deal breaker.
Sure, but what you were saying is if there was what David was saying is some people can change.
Yeah, if
Right,
there was
David.
an attempt to atone for their past sins, I think people should be afforded that chance. I haven't lived a perfect life, and I've been given that grace a few times in my own life, not for domestic violence.
No,
but if they have atoned for their sins, gone to counseling, and worked on themselves and the issues that caused that, and if it's far enough in the past that there is enough time for that personal growth, I think it could be something that you could take out of the deal breaker column. Gut
Sure.
reaction, yeah, absolutely. I don't want to be with someone who's going to be violent towards me.
but remember, look, behaviors
Been there.
are environmentally, oftentimes environmentally caused. So if you were in an environment, say your parents were in an abusive relationship, you kind of started the dating life, teens, early 20s, you were an abusive dude, and then you were like, wait a second, this is like, now I'm in the real world, and like, that's not life. And then you do what you got to do, and a decade goes by, and somebody's and you're dating somebody, and they're like, hey, have you ever contributed to an abusive relationship? And you're like, yeah, but I didn't realize how terrible and bad it was, and I feel terrible about it. And for me, that's kind of everything I experienced. And when I had some additional perspective, I realized that wasn't the case. Then you kind of get like a bit of a pass card. However, if that resurfaces, then it's an issue. So I think any physical abuse in a relationship, it's got to be over with.
I'd say that's a red flag. Less like there's deal breakers, and that sounds to me more like a red flag, because like you need to really investigate that one.
Yeah, but again,
it may not be a deal breaker.
Well, let me get to something Justin just said. If it's ever domestic violence against me in the relationship, like that's how I'm finding out, is because I'm the one being hit. Absolute fucking deal breaker. No chance.
Sure.
So this is something you find about in the history 10 years ago. Just something Justin just said there. I was like, wait a minute, I'm not talking about recovering a relationship from this. Get the fuck out.
Yeah, no. If you're a victim of domestic violence in a relationship, then yes, that should be a deal breaker. Get the fuck out.
Maybe I didn't phrase that as well.
It's okay.
Sepitz is asking. This is an easy one. Sepitz is asking, what's the age of the men on this panel?
It's not, because yours is going to change. 4 hours.
31. James.
35.
As of.
Well, in Europe, I'm already 35.
And I'm 35. So
can hear that being, well, officer, in Europe she's 18.
They use the metric system.
All right, so let's hit the next one. Lisa, you know me. Lisa says, dishonesty, especially when I'm not overbearing or a jealous person, just be honest. So dishonesty, I think, is a big one. I know people who are like compulsive liars, and that's not cool. Lying is not good. From Musicology by Eric, small penis kidding.
Well,
kidding about the small penis, like that wasn't surprised. Like, all right,
I'm not.
Got more than I bargained for here.
I don't know how that's gonna work, but we can delve into the genitalia issue. For girls who are dating a guy that's got an exceptionally small penis, I could see that could be a deal breaker. As a guy that's with a woman who has a small penis, heads up, she's probably not a woman. But there's other factors that come into the genitalia argument, like cleanliness, type situation.
That's it.
That's a deal breaker.
We've gotten this question kind of in two different ways. So age gap and age.
I thought age gap and felon.
Oh, well, sometimes they're related.
Well, my last relationship was with someone 8 years older than me, so that worked out great. Maturity level is about on par, though.
I was thinking about having a podcast. Like, I was thinking about having an episode that we I don't. I was just thinking as a young dude, the advice that I would give myself would have been to date older women. Like, because younger women oftentimes just are not. I just feel like you learn a lot more from the older women. So, the age gap thing that we talked about a little bit, the age gap could be a major deal breaker. In my early 30s, I tried dating somebody who was in their early 20s, and it was not happening. And it also comes with a generational kind of gap. It's
a lot of different brackets.
But the older you get, the older. What's the multiplier? It's like
divide by 2 and add 7.
Divide by 2 and add 7,
or divide by 7 and add 2.
I don't think that works so much. But the divide by 2 and add 7, that rule holds up really, really, really well. So you divide your age by 2 and you add 7, and if it's within that range, so over that range, you're okay. Yep. That's the age gap rule. All right, let me hit a few more because guys, we're at the 45-minute mark. We haven't even hit the red flags, and I'm not even a third of the way done with this list.
Well, we might have to come back and do red flags as another episode.
I'd hate to have more content that we've pre-planned.
Oh yeah, because that's never a problem for us.
All right, so we got Musicology by Eric. He's got a small penis, but he's kidding. We got Shahira, who says religion. Religion, obviously a major one.
I think that depends.
Depends how many relationships have you been with somebody who is religious? Mine are almost everyone.
A few.
You're in the South.
My first actual girlfriend was the daughter of a pastor.
But was she religious?
Yeah.
Because
I'm trying to think of her name in my head. I can't, but I know who you're talking.
H dog. Let's just call it H dog. That way we'll use it.
Was it a real religion though?
Yes.
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 Methodist.
Well, that's
Methodist.
That's not one of the big ones. I mean, it's Christian, but.
Well, I dated a daughter that was the daughter of a preacher as well, but she wasn't very religious.
But yeah, I think religion is a definitely a major big one. All right, here's this doesn't make sense.
But we're not answering. Is that a deal breaker for either of you guys?
No, it's not. It's only a deal breaker if they expect me to participate. And
that's exactly my answer.
My potential progeny to participate, because I don't really want my kids being raised. I don't want that if I had kids.
Well, look, I was raised, in my opinion, we kind of grew up together. I feel like I was raised a bit more religious than you guys were.
Yes.
You stepped into church before you were 18. You were raised more religiously.
But I like some of the traditions of religion. Obviously, I love holidays too, but I'm not sure if I want my child to be as religious as I was as a child. But I just want an educated child who can make their own decisions. I think that's
even though we're our house for Hanukkah and Passover, Justin. We still do it, but we're super not religious about it.
Yeah,
it's the culture, it's the tradition.
It's a tradition. Yeah, and I think
we're all good for that.
I think that's a cool aspect of the religion. Like, that's your culture.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily need to be your.
I want to hit this one by MJ. Someone who makes more money than you do. Nope. Bonus. All
right, let me hit a few more.
That's the opposite of a deal breaker.
I got VVOJ, bad teeth gums, halitosis addictions. I think there should have been
that's actually a deal breaker for me.
I think that there should have been some commas in there.
What about Morella in Barcelona? She had jacked up teeth, James.
I don't recall.
Wow.
You should.
Wow, James just got called out hardcore.
No.
I'm gonna move on. Blondes Have More Fun says cheating, lying, drugs, alcohol. I believe we touched on those already.
That's a deep cut though.
No. Yeah, that was unfairly specific, and that's why I'm going to keep moving. Jay Brandy says kids work with you, so someone from the same you work with this person. That's a deal breaker.
Not only is it not a deal breaker, I've done it.
It's a good idea to avoid if possible.
And then divorced, lots of tattoos, and goes to church, which I feel like.
Let's address each one of those separately.
Well,
Divorced, not a deal breaker.
I feel like for the commenter, this is all pretzeled into one person. So
It does sound that way.
It does.
It's a lot of
but-
dough laid on top of dough and kind of twisted and tied together. So
I'm gonna say that divorced, not a deal breaker. Goes to church, not a deal breaker as long as I don't have to go. And what was the other one?
Tattoos.
Tattoos, not a deal
Lots.
breaker.
I think some face tattoos would be a deal breaker. If they had
Not
a
many
huge
people
mouth,
have those.
no, hold up. One of
so it's an easier rule to hold to.
I hired somebody who had face tattoos. One of the sweetest women that I've ever worked with, and the first interview she came in for, I kind of and Rosh knows this because he was doing interviews at the time. I kind of said we can't hire this person, professionalism. But when I actually sat down with the person, I was and spoke with her, I thought to myself, how can we not hire this person? We just need to find her niche in the business.
Well, I was talking about, again, teardrop.
Well, teardrop tattoo is a little different.
What does teardrop mean?
I think that's supposed to signify that you've killed someone.
Oh,
Yeah, I think if you kill like 3 people, you get a teardrop. I don't know. Either way, if you have a teardrop tattoo, it doesn't mean you're sad.
I don't know. That's a story. I want to hear it.
Well, we'll have to Google it and talk about it in a gun episode or a gangs episode. We should actually do a gangs episode.
We're very
Yeah.
well qualified to
Yeah,
talk
since
about
we
it.
know so much about it.
All right, I gotta fast forward because I had a whole bunch more of these, and we're at the 51-minute mark. Miss Raquel, close-minded. I think we all kind of agree. Close-mindedness, because everybody's coming from their own world. Being closed-minded, especially to someone else's world, is not bad. It's not good. Elena S.J. Indecision.
Nope.
Breadcrumbing with their time, which means you only get a little bit of their time or something, especially when you're like initially dating, I
That
guess.
ties into flakiness.
And yeah, and I
Flakiness
think
is
it's the
breaker.
same idea. It's just how they're playing it or how you're perceiving it. And then overly political, which obviously could be a big issue when it comes to politics.
It's binging on which side they land.
Doug Perkins, Harry Norman, can't mesh with my inner circle emoji, friends. Yeah, I think if they can't hang out with your friends, that's a major deal breaker, because what are you expected to do? Just cut your life out of it?
Depends on the dynamic.
I want to know why.
Well, in the short term, it's probably okay, because in the short term, like, all you want to do is fuck. But in the long term, like, you need to have a life outside of that relationship in terms of like social.
Yeah, but
Social
James and I have both at separate times both been in a state of utter contempt for each other's partners. So whose fault was that? Because neither of us are dating them anymore. So
it's
we
the
were both
partner.
upset with the other one and
But
their
no,
partner.
but we're not talking about the friends. The comment isn't talking about the friend's reaction to your part of it. The comment is talking about your partner's reaction to your friends.
I think
Well,
it's the same.
Well, in that circumstance, it may have been, but it's
Well, it works. It was the same circumstance as the positive question, so we can run with it.
all right. Let's move though, because we got to move. Aspire to beat drugs, cocainism or coconsinkin, drugs, no job, unless drugs is a job.
Can be.
Peter Smith not letting me sleep with their friends. Next one.
That's the winner, man.
Next one.
No,
Caitlin.
like, we have to take a step back and appreciate that one.
All right, I'm gonna move on because we're running out of time. Kayleen Q says kids. All right, we're almost at the end. Bear with me. I got 8 more. Andy Pez, 84, bisexual. Emily KG, being rude to service workers, which I think that was mentioned
We
earlier.
already hit that one.
Phillips, B and J, xenophobia. Brandy, shitty husbands. Okay. Beach Bella, all of yours, but also depression, anxiety, super stressful to deal with. Nick Oat, inauthenticity, and Allie D, Alley 2D X's. So there was a lot there. We're running.
Why would bisexual be a deal breaker?
Because the person has too many options, and also you're questioning their past.
So what if they have too many options? There's 7 billion people, you have plenty
well,
of options.
people
You
don't
stick to whatever to one.
But
gender.
people aren't good at math, and also the
Sure.
options have doubled, and that's a lot more options for the people who are good at math.
When you
Well,
look at it in a
Step up
discrete-
your game.
But yeah, you're like, oh wait, that person has 2 billion other options. That's really
And it's
makes me-
not adding another.
that makes me
it's
uncomfortable.
not,
Then you're like,
it's
wait,
not-
that person has 2 billion additional options. That's
it's
really
not adding that many more options because you have to find someone that would be in the subset that is attracted to someone of the same sex.
well.
So it's only adding a small percentage of whichever
Yeah.
sex that
The
person
double,
is.
the
We're
double,
talking
the
maybe.
number, basically.
No, it wouldn't. It would add 5 to 10%. You're finding it's all. Let's say that she is. Let's say in this situation we have a boy and a girl. Girl is bisexual.
Well, you're adding only the gay/queer population on top of
That would be eligible for her to hook
Well-
up with because they would be down with the bisexual nature of her
Unless you're going
sexual
the other-
identity.
unless you're going the other direction and you're gay dating somebody who's queer, and that
Well,
person
yeah,
has
well,
way
that would
more
increase
options.
it
Yeah.
by way more.
Yeah, by
That's
way
different.
more. Exactly. So
Depends how you phrase it. Yeah.
yeah. So if
Good
you're
point.
gay and you're dating a gay partner, if you're dating a bisexual, if you're gay dating a bisexual partner, that bisexual partner has way more options effectively than you do.
Ross says bisexual should not be a deal breaker for men because you're when we bring another girl in for a threesome.
But
Like, look, I'm dealing with I don't need to double the amount of disappointment I'm looking at in the morning.
well, at
You
least
usually
at
do
least they're
anyways.
staying over. At least they're
What?
staying over, James.
No, it's just
Maybe that's
increasing
part of
the it's
disappointment.
increasing the disappointment by a factor of 2.
Well, James gets him to stay over. He typically says, "Look, I got pillows and sheets here. It's way more comfortable than a cardboard box, so I can drive you back to wherever you were." But I
get
think we
Down
had
the
some.
block.
I think we had some good comments here. I think we had actually. I really think we had some really really solid question. I wish we had more time to discuss this stuff. So tonight's episode turned out only to be about deal breakers. We did not get a chance to discuss the red flags, which I feel like is a whole nother
Let's do that next week.
podcast. On that note, it's getting late, boys. Here on
It
the
is.
right coast. Over there on the left coast, though, I don't know. But I'm super happy that we got through as many as we did. I wish we had a little more time to talk about some of the ones that we did.
Well, let's hit
And,
them up on Tuesday. I got drinks at a bar waiting for me.
All right. And just remember, guys, we got that call-in number. So if you guys want to do the call-in feature, we'd love to. I guess we'll probably have to hit it the next time around, but it is there. We'd love to hear your feedback vocally. I do want to thank Rosh Galeb. Rosh, a little under the weather this evening, powered through, fed us all of your comments. Oh, fuck, we got disconnected. We hit the hour mark, but Rosh did power through. He fed us all your comments. We want to thank him for that. We want to thank you guys for joining. We're going to do this kind of goofy, awkward dismount. Should we stay on, James?
No, I need, I've been kind of stringing Kevin and Andrew along tonight, so I need to take them out to a bar so that they can have some stimulation.
All right, hold up. I'm gonna dismount. Everybody who's live, goodbye, James. Keep those guys on board for just a second. Goodbye, everybody. Adios.
Adios.
All right, that concludes this episode of Sip Talk. Let me know if you think we hit all the deal breakers. Let me know which ones we missed. And again, let me know which ones you think are the biggest deal breakers. All right, guys. See you next time.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.